let's talk about some of the challenges here of how FiveThirtyEight is doing this. FiveThirtyEight, for those who don't know, is one of the premier political statistic quant nerd websites, and I like them a lot. I use them. I'm not going to knock them, but I think they're a good example because most people are going to be familiar, and they just released their presidential forecast. So the question now is, with all these terms on systems thinking, we can now look at the FiveThirtyEight thing and ask, are they making a prediction or a forecast? So I grabbed a couple graphics from their site. This is what's on their page right now. And the forecast is, and they're calling it a forecast, but I'm challenging, is this a prediction or a forecast? Let's look at the chart. They have a chance of winning, a percentage range, and it shows here that 72 and 100 versus 28 and 100. The blue is for Biden, the red is for Trump. Well, this is why I don't like predictions of events. They're establishing a probability. First of all, from a soundness principle, any sound model should be falsifiable. If I have a prediction that says in a two-candidate race, we're virtually guaranteed that one of those candidates is going to win, unless I have a prediction that's 100% to 0%, any outcome of that race that consists of one or the other winning, I could claim was in my probability range. Even if it's 99 to 1, because the election only happens once, it's a unique event. Let's say it's 99 to 1, and that one person wins, I could say, well, see, there's a 1% chance they won, and they won. I'm within my probability. This is why I don't like predictions of elections, probability predictions. It doesn't provide useful information because there's nothing falsifiable in this probability. Now what would be useful is there's a 25% chance someone you've never heard of is going to win the election. That would be interesting if it happened. If it came to pass, that would be interesting. But probabilities tend to break down in these unique events because you cannot, remember, complex systems. You cannot run the same experiment twice. You cannot have a unique event occur multiple times. We can't have 100 presidential elections and count how many times Biden won versus how many times Trump won. We're only going to have one. And this leads a little bit to, I think, the question of, did FiveThirtyEight get the prediction wrong in 2016? And this was a very famous call they made that looks a lot like that, it was 78-22 Biden to Trump in the previous slide. When they made the call for Clinton, it was 71.4 for Clinton, 28.6 for Trump, virtually the same numbers, and they're getting a lot of grief. Now, a couple things of difference. Remember, I talk about in complex systems, one of the ways you defeat that doubling error rate is you sample very frequently. Well, they were, right now we're in this August frame here. They were making sampling and calls all the way up to the very end, so the final forecast. So they are trying to do that sampling and statistics, but it still has that same percentage. This threw off a lot of people. 71% chance Clinton wins, 28% chance Trump wins. Doesn't mean Clinton's always going to win, but you can't tell that in a unique event. You tend to think, well, Clinton's going to win because she has the higher percentage, but that's not what that means, and that's why this is a very confusing forecast. And Ed's asking a great question. Do I think this perspective is related to Nate Silver's background in sports analytics? Absolutely. I think the feedback effect here, so Nate Silver runs FiveThirtyEight, and he comes from sports analytics, and sports analytics are often doing forecasts where they're looking at behaviors over time of individual players, how those behaviors contribute to wins and losses over a season. Now, wins and losses are not unique events. Each game is a unique event, but the collection of wins and losses is kind of like, here's a bunch of scenarios, and the accumulation, those player behaviors are the causative mechanisms by which you win or lose a game. And we can say over a season of 16 football games that 12 are won and 4 are lost, that can actually be closer to bear out because you actually have 16 games to play. And I think he got a little bit sideways when they do this presentation of probability for single unique events. I think they're kind of blending those concepts together. But to Nate Silver's credit, he did something, and what FiveThirtyEight did is on the morning they made this forecast, they explained, and this is, I just grabbed this morning. This is still up there from November 8th, 2016. They described the ways they could be wrong, and this is a sign of a good modeler. In the forecast, they said Clinton has a 72% or 71%, Trump has 29%. They said, these are the 3 ways we could be wrong. First, there's a margin of error in the polling error, and it's not a high one, so that could be discounted. The number of undecided and third-party voters is much higher. And the location of Clinton's supporters tends to congregate in states that were already going to go for Clinton anyways and don't provide an electoral advantage. So the way I described 538 getting it wrong in 2016 is they blew the prediction like everyone else, but they got the wrong absolutely right. By that I mean they said before it happened, if we're wrong, this is how we're going to be wrong. And I think they were pretty accurate in that regards. That's a neat trick of forecasting. If you read my forecasts, like any of the New Year's Eve Ask Me Anythings, I'll make a forecast of what's going to happen in the world in the year ahead based on what people ask me. But then I'll say, if I'm wrong, this is the way I'm going to be wrong. And that's an important thing to put in there as to understand about systems is it's not just about getting it right. It's about understanding the causal actions of why something came to pass. And that leads us to the current 538 2020 forecast. I think they've learned a lot in 4 years, and you can still see they've got this kind of probability thing on their headline page, that percentage. I hope they get away with that, because what's further down the page, if you scroll, is this graphic. Biden is favored to win the election, and they've got a graphic here where they show we simulate the election 40,000 times, then they sampled 100 outcomes, and now these outcomes are placed showing where they are on an electoral score. So now you've got something that says an electoral score is a combination of states. They have made a forecast. Each one of these is a scenario now. Rather than doing a prediction that's saying a 72%, they're saying, look, out of 100 scenarios, 72 of those scenarios, Biden wins. And I imagine if you could go into each one of these dots, it would be a different configuration of state by state results that generated an electoral college that generated this point score. And then here's the one that Trump wins. Why this builds confidence. So in systems thinking, we're dealing with complex systems. We're always trying to build confidence in our forecast. Remember, Biden or Trump's going to win, pretty much guaranteed. One of those two is likely to win, barring some extreme outlandish event, hard to predict. One of those two is going to win. So it doesn't help me to just say, well, 72%, 80%, but each one of these dots behind the scenes is a scenario of how they win. If I don't just tell you Biden's going to win, but I say the exact combination of states he's going to take that generate an electoral college score, that builds confidence. If Trump happens to win, it's one of these 28 scenarios, and one of these 28 scenarios correctly describes the states that he won and by how much. That builds confidence. This concept of confidence building is that I've done the steps that you can have confidence that I'm not just claiming credit for something I didn't earn, I described. Now, the caveat here is that under normal conditions, there's only 6 to 8 battleground states. The combinatorics of those aren't that high. You could, with 100 scenarios, you could, and the different ways those battleground states could go, or a couple swing states, you could cover the wide variety of scenarios that would result in a Trump or a Biden win. But and they have this little friendly graphic down here that says, don't count the underdog out, upset wins are surprising yet frequent. And I think that's them trying to get out of the doghouse they dug themselves in 2016. So we can use these complex systems. The U.S. presidential election is a complex system we can use to understand a lot of systems thinking concepts, and we can build upon this as we go into more and more discussion about complex systems. These concepts of path dependency, path independency, whether it's a chaotic system versus complex versus complicated. These are things you're going to see come up over and again. So appreciate your time today. If you have any questions on structured systems thinking, have a problem you'd like our help on, or want to know more about developing your own capabilities in systems thinking, please reach out at the email below. We'd love to hear from you. If you're interested in what we do and want to follow our journey, I've added our LinkedIn and Twitter information. And we plan to regularly update this channel with quick tips and case studies to help you get the most out of your systems thinking and lean efforts. If you want to be notified whenever we add new video content, please consider subscribing to this channel by clicking on the red subscribe button below this video.